guys, so now it's time to go over the Chapter 11 review. You should have already completed it. Everything should be put away except for your red pen, your review, and your extra sheet of paper. And that has your work on it, and now we're going to go through and we'll do the answers. So if you do not have your name, number, and date, that's the first thing you need to do. Write your name, number, and date at the top with your red pen. And then let's do the vocabulary check. The first part says, draw a line from each word to its definition. So number 1 is customary system. And the definition for customary system is units of measure most often used in the United States. Number 2 is the word convert. Convert means to change one unit to another. Number 3 is the word line plot, which is a graph that uses columns of X's above a number line to show frequency of data. Remember, frequency means how often something appears or doesn't appear. Number 4 is capacity, which is a measure that tells the amount of liquid a container can hold. Number 5 is weight, which is a measurement that tells how heavy an object is. So, really quickly, number 1 goes with the last or 5th bullet point. Number 2 goes with the 4th bullet point. Number 3 goes with the 3rd bullet point. Number 4 goes with the 1st bullet point. And number 5 goes with the 2nd bullet point. So make sure that you check those up right now with your red pen and correct them if you need to. Okay, so for the second part of the review, the directions say, write an example for each measurement. Now your example, might be completely different than mine, and that's okay. Just make sure that if you're imagining the object that I'm putting on the board, that your object is pretty close to that object. If it is very different, that means you need to correct your answer. So number 6 is 1 yard. So we're writing an example of something that measures 1 yard. And my example is, the height of a desk. So you probably don't have that. If you do, if you have something else, if you can imagine it and it's about the same as the height of a desk, like your school desk, then you are correct. Number 8, 1 foot. Well, 1 foot is about the length of a human foot. Well, an adult human foot. So if your object is about that same length, then you are correct. Number 10, 1 mile. Well, 1 mile could be about the distance between ICCS and the University of Memphis. That's about a mile, maybe a little more or a little less. Or no, probably not a little less, maybe a little more, but it's about. So if you have something that's about that same distance, I didn't want to say my house, because yes, my house is about a mile or so, but your house may not, and you don't know that distance. So about the distance between IC and U of M. Number 12, 1 fluid ounce is about the amount of shampoo in a travel bottle. So you know those little bottles of shampoo that you can buy if you're about to go on a plane, that's about 1 ounce. Okay, number 14, 1 cup. About the amount of juice a small glass holds. I'm not going to write the word. Well, I can write it over here. Holds. Okay, number 16, 1 pint. Well, 1 pint is about the same as a bowl of soup that you would eat on your own. Number 7, 1 quart is about the same as a water bottle. 1 gallon is about the same as a paint can. 1 ounce is about the amount that can fit in an eyedropper. Oops, whoops, nope, I'm thinking of fluid ounces, I'm sorry. 1 ounce is about the weight of a walnut. 1 pound, excuse me, is about the weight of a textbook. 1 ton is about the same as a baby hippo. An adult hippo would probably be about 2 tons. And then number 17, 1 second, what should we put? About the time it takes to snap. That's about a second. Maybe a little less, but about a second. So if you probably do not have those same answers. I mean, it would be very weird if you had those same answers. But as long as you know that the objects that you chose are similar to the objects I have on the board, you're fine. If you did not choose objects, well then you did not understand the question, so you need to correct them. That means you did not pay close attention to what the directions were saying, and you kind of just guessed. So, yours might be a little different, but that's okay. Okay, let's move on to the next page. Okay, so for number 18 through 21, we are completing conversion tables. So let's look at number 18. We have inches and yards. Inches are small. Yards are big. We know the yards, which means even though inches come first in this column, we're still going big to small, which means we're going to multiply. However, we're going to have to do a couple steps because on our chart that just shows examples of these units, inches and yards are not right next to each other. So that means on our separate sheet of paper, we needed to show yards to feet to inches. Make sure you do that. If you did not, you need to correct it with this because on your test, I will be looking for this. The only time that you don't have to go between is if you're trying to say the number of days in a year. You don't have to go to weeks and months first because our conversion chart tells us that there are 365 days in a year. Our conversion chart does not tell us how many inches are in a yard. And even though we can figure it out easily and do that multiplication, if you have to do division with it on your test, you are not going to be able to figure out, okay, I know that I have 368 inches and I'm trying to figure out yards. You're not going to be able to do this division. So that's why you have to go from yards to feet to inches, or inches to feet to yards. So, I know that I have 1 yard, 3 yards, 5 yards, and 7 yards. So first, I'm going to figure out how many inches are in 1 yard. Well, first, step 1 is I have to figure out how many feet are in a yard. I know I'm going from big to small, so I'm going to multiply. I start with what I know, which is 1 yard, and I'm going to multiply it by the number of feet in a yard, which is 3. You should know this because you should be memorizing. You may have had to use your conversion chart today on the review, but remember on your test you will not be able to do it. So 1 times 3 is 3. That means 1 yard is equivalent to 3 feet. But we're not done yet because now step 2 is how many inches are in 3 feet, and that will be our answer. But we're still going from big to small, so we're going to multiply. We start with what we know, which is 3 feet, and then we multiply it by the number of inches in a foot, which is 12. 3 times 12 is a basic fact. It equals 36. So there are 36, so that means there are 36 inches in a yard. Don't forget your number pair. And so we've got that. Now we need to move on to 3 yards. You should be doing this in separate places, but I'm going to go ahead and erase because I don't have as much room as you do. So I still know I'm going from yards to feet to inches. So I'm just going to change it up. And now I'm looking at 3 yards. So 3 yards equals how many feet? That's step 1. I know I multiply because I'm going from big to small. I start with what I know, which is 3 yards. I multiply by the number of feet in a yard, which is 3. 3 times 3 equals 9. So that means there are 9 feet in 3 yards. But now I have to do step 2 to figure out how many inches there are. Make sure you are doing this. I will be looking for this. I will be looking for this. If you have not, you will lose points because you need to be able to see that there are units in between, and you need to be able to do this so that when you get to the division, you aren't having to divide a very large number by 36, which you don't know how to do. We did not learn double-digit division. The only time that you guys know how to do double-digit division is if it's a 12 because it's a basic fact. Okay, so again, we know we're multiplying. We start with what we know, which is 9 feet. We multiply it by the number of inches in a foot, which is 12. 9 times 12 is a basic fact. It equals 108. Oops. So that means there are 108 inches in 3 feet. Oh, I'm sorry, in 3 yards, not 3 feet. There's only 36 inches in 3 feet. So there's 108 inches in 3 yards. Okay, now we have to figure out 5 yards. So again, step 1 is to figure out how many feet are in 5 yards. We know we're multiplying. We start with what we know, which is 5 yards. Multiply it by the number of feet in a yard, which is 3. 5 times 3 equals 15. So now we know that there are 15 feet in 5 yards. Now, step 2, we have to take those 15 feet and figure out how many, yards, how many inches are in 15 feet. Big to small, so we're going to multiply. We start with what we know, which is 15. We're going to multiply it by the number of inches in a foot, which is 12. Now we have 15 times 12. That's not a basic fact. We can't solve it with basic facts and patterns. So let's go ahead and solve it up and down, which if you did not do that with your red pen. That would be another way because you need to show your work. I need to see how you found it. You need to practice doing it. You need to make sure that you're not making silly mistakes by trying to do it in your head. Well, we know when we're multiplying double-digit multiplication, we take our number on the top, which is 15, and we multiply it by the value of the digit in this ones place on the bottom, which is 2. 15 times 2, well, 2 times 5 is 10. We regroup the 1 to the tens place. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. So that means our first partial product is 30. Remember, don't forget this. I'm going to go ahead and cross out that regroup number so I don't accidentally use it again. And now I know step 2 is to take my whole top number, which is 15, and multiply it by the value of the digit in the tens place on the bottom. A 1 in the tens place is worth 10. 15 times 10, we can solve that using basic facts and patterns. We know there's going to be a 0 in the ones place. Then 15 times 1 is 15. Add our partial product. 0 plus 0 is 0. 3 plus 5 is 8. Oops. 1 plus nothing is 1. So that means 15 times 12 is 180, which means that there are 180 inches in 5 feet. So there's 180 inches in 5 feet. Okay, you may be thinking, that's so many extra steps. We don't need that. But you do. You need the practice. You are learning this. And also next year when you get to Miss Bauer's class, she requires you to show all the steps too. And math there gets to be more steps. So the better you know these first steps, the easier it'll be for you later on. Okay, so now we're going to do the same thing with 7 yards. So step 1 is to figure out how many feet are in 7 yards. We know we're multiplying. We start with what we know, which is 7 yards. We're going to multiply it by the number of feet in a yard, which is 3. 7 times 3 is 21, which means that there are 21 feet in 7 yards. Step 2, we have to take that 21 feet and figure out how many inches there are. We know we're multiplying because we're going from big to small. We start with what we know, which is 21. Multiply it by the number of inches in a foot, which is 12. And now we need to set this problem up and down. So 21 times 12. Step 1 is to multiply the ones. So we take our whole top number, 21, multiply it by the value of the digit in the ones place on the bottom, which is 2. 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. So that's our first partial product. Now step 2, we multiply the tens. We take that whole top number, multiply it by the value of the digit in the tens place on the bottom. A 1 in the tens place is worth 10. We can solve this using basic facts and patterns. We know that 21 times 10 is 210. Now we need to add our partial products. 2 plus 0 is 2. 4 plus 1 is 5. 2 plus nothing is 2, which means that 21 times 12 is 252. So there are 252 inches in 7 yards. Okay, so that's it for number 18. Remember, if the units are not right next to each other on that chart, on that anchor chart where we first introduced the units, you have to go between each one. The only time you don't is on that time chart where you don't have to go from days to weeks to months to years. You can just go straight from days to months because we have that conversion on our conversion chart. Another example, you don't have to go from feet to yards to miles because our conversion chart tells us there are 5,280 feet in 1 mile. So if the conversion chart tells you how many of a smaller one are in a larger one, or in a larger unit, even if they're not right next to each other on that chart, then you can use it, but only if it's on the conversion charts. The conversion charts do not tell us that there are 36 inches in 1 yard. So you cannot do that because if you have to divide, which you may, if you know the number of inches and you have to find the number of yards, you're not going to be able to do that because at some point you're going to have to divide a large number by 36 and you don't know how to do that. That's why we're going from yards to feet to inches or inches to feet to yards. Okay, number 19 is another example of this. We have cups, which are small. We have gallons, which are big. We know the bigger unit, the gallons, so that means we're going from big to small, which means we're going to multiply. But on our chart, gallons and cups are not right next to each other. They have pints in between. So that means for number 19, I have to go from gallons to pints to cups. So, step 1 is I know I have 2 gallons and I need to figure out how many pints are in 2 gallons. Well, I know I'm going from big to small, so I'm going to multiply. I start with what I know, which is 2 gallons. and I multiply it by the number of pints. Oh, oops. I'm sorry. I completely messed that up because I forgot about quarts. How could I forget about quarts? So we have to go from gallon to quarts to pints to cups. Even teachers make mistakes, but you know I make mistakes all the time. Luckily, you just have to admit to them and fix them. So we actually have several steps because we have to do step 1, step 2, step 3. So, step 1. I have 2 gallons. I'm trying to figure out how many quarts that is. I'm going from big to small, so I'm going to multiply. I start with what I know, which is 2 gallons. And then I multiply by the number of quarts in a gallon, which is 4. 2 times 4 equals 8. So step 2, I have to figure out, how many pints are in 8 quarts. Again, I'm going from big to small, so I'm going to multiply. I start with what I know, which is 8. I'm going to multiply it by the number of pints in a quart, which is 2. 8 times 2 is 16. So that means there are 16 pints in 8 quarts. Step 3. Now I have to figure out my final answer, which will be how many cups are in 16 pints. I'm going from big to small, so I'm going to multiply. Start with what I know, which is 16 pints. Multiply it by the number of cups in a pint, which is 16. Which is 2. Sorry, I said 16 again. That is not a basic fact, so we need to solve it to the side. Remember, if it's not a basic fact, if you can't use basic facts and patterns to solve, and if it is not the identity property of multiplication, you must show the multiplication to the side. 2 times 6 is 12. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. So that means there are 32 cups in 16 pints, which means that there are 32 cups in 2 gallons. Okay, so now we have to do the same thing again, this time with 3 gallons. So I'm going to start over with step 1, which means I know I have 3 gallons, and I'm trying to figure out how many quarts are in 3 gallons. I'm multiplying 3 gallons by the number of quarts in a gallon. 3 times 4 is 12. So now I have 12 quarts. And step 2 is to figure out how many pints that is. I know I'm taking my 12 quarts and I'm multiplying it by the number of pints in a quart, which is 2. 12 times 2 is 24. So now step 3, I take my 24 pints and I figure out how many cups that are in there. So I know I'm going to multiply 24 pints by the number of cups in a pint, which is 2. This is not a basic fact, so I need to solve it to the side. 4 times 2 is 8. 2 times 2 is 4. So that means there are 48 cups in 24 pints, which means that there are 48 cups in 3 gallons. Okay, next, 4 gallons. Now you should have all of this work still on your paper. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to use it to study. Step 1, figure out how many quarts are in 4 gallons. Well, I know I'm multiplying 4 gallons by the number of quarts in a gallon, which is 4. 4 times 4 is 16. Step 2, find out how many pints are in 16 gallons. So I'm taking my 16 quarts, multiplying it by the number of pints in a quart, which is 2. We already figured out that 16 times 2 was 32. Step 3, which is the last step in this case, how many cups are in 32 pints? Well, I know I'm taking my 32 pints. Oops, I wanted to write the unit, but I don't have to here. By the number of cups in a pint, which is 2. That is not a basic fact. We haven't done it yet. in this problem, so 2 times 2 is 4, 2 times 3 is 6. So that means there are 64 cups in 4 gallons. Oops, almost forgot my number pair. 64 cups in 4 gallons. Okay, last one for this conversion chart. How many cups are in 5 gallons? So, step 1, find out how many quarts are in 5 gallons. So I'm going to take my 5 gallons, multiply it by 4. There are 20 quarts in 5 gallons, so step 2, figure out how many pints are in 20 quarts. I'm taking my 20 quarts. Oh, I keep doing that because I'm saying the word, so I want to write them as I say them. Multiply it by the number of pints, which is 2. 20 times 2, we can use basic facts and patterns. It's, 40 pints. Now, last step. How many cups are in 40 pints? We take our 40 pints, multiply it by 2, which is the number of cups in a pint. Basic facts and patterns says that answer is 80 cups, which means that there are 80 cups in 5 gallons. Whew! That was a lot of work, but you should feel so good about yourself that you did all that, especially if you did it in the first place like you were supposed to. Awesome job! Okay, well now luckily after that, we're moving into basic facts one-step territory. Because number 20, we know this, we have feet and yards. Feet are small, yards are big. We know the yards, we're trying to find the feet, so we're going from big to small. Feet and yards are right next to each other on our chart that just introduces the units, which means we're doing one step for each one. We know that there are 3 feet in a yard, and all we have to do is fill in the rest is the number that we know. Well, we know 2 yards, we know 4 yards, we know 6 yards, and we know 8 yards. Basic facts basic facts every time. One step, basic facts. We got it. We needed that after all this work, but we're feeling really good about ourselves. 2 times 3 is 6, so there are 6 feet in 2 yards. 4 times 3 is 12, so there are 12 feet. Oops, let me break free. In 4 yards. 6 times 3 is 18, so there are 18 feet in 6 yards. 8 times 3 is 24, so there are 24 feet in 8 yards. Whew, we got it. We have got this, because now this is probably the one with the most steps, and you did it 1, 2, 3, 4 times at least, so now you've got this. Number 21, we know minutes, which are small. We have minutes and seconds. Minutes are small, but not as small as seconds. So we know minutes, which are big. We're trying to find seconds, which are small. Minutes and seconds are right next to each other. We're going from big to small, which means we are doing one-step multiplication. Not basic facts, but what we do know is that there are 60 seconds in a minute, which means we're going to multiply by 60 each time, which means that we can most likely use basic facts and patterns. Now let's put in what we know. Make sure, remember, when you're doing one step, especially one step basic facts or basic facts and patterns, the equation does need to be written to the side. So we know 1 minute, we know 3 minutes, we know 5 minutes, and we know 7 minutes. All basic facts and patterns. 1 times 6 is 6. Put the 0 at the end. In 1 minute, there are 60 seconds. Now for 3 minutes, the basic fact is 3 times 6. Put that 0 at the end, which means in 3 minutes, They're 180 seconds. Now for 5 minutes. Basic fact is 5 times 6, which is 30. Remember, we can't say, oh, we already have a 0 at the end, so we don't have to put that one. Nope, that doesn't work. We still have to take that 0 and put it at the end, which means that in 5 minutes, there are 300 seconds. Last one, the basic fact is 7 times 6, which is 42. Put that 0 at the end, which means that in 7 minutes, there are 420 seconds. Okay, so we did have some not difficult ones, but ones that took some extra steps in 18 and 19, but luckily we made up for it by having basic facts and then problems we can use basic facts and patterns in number 20 and 21. So that's all you have to remember. Yes, on your test and in life, there may be some that take a lot longer, but then to balance it out, you're going to have some that don't take as long to make up for it. So don't forget that. That's why we always show all of our work for the difficult ones in order to make the easier ones easy. If we hadn't done all this practice with all this extra work, these wouldn't be as easy or as quick. Okay, so now let's move on to the next problems. Okay, so for number 22 through 25, all we needed was to know our conversions, which again, you should be studying and memorizing, because our conversion chart, excuse me, tells us exactly how much greater each of the larger units are than the smaller units. We know that 1 foot is 12 inches, which means a foot is 12 times bigger than an inch, and so on. So number 22 says how many times greater is 1 hour than 1 minute. So all we would do is we would figure out how many minutes are in 1 hour. We know that there are 60 minutes in 1 hour, which means that an hour is 60 times greater than 1 minute. Because if you take 60 of those minutes and repeat them, if you repeat 1 minute and if you repeat 1 minute 60 times, then you've spent an hour. So that means 1 hour is 60 times greater than 1 minute. Number 23, how many times greater is 1 gallon than 1 quart? Well, our conversions tell us that there are 4 quarts in 1 gallon, so that means we repeated a quart 4 times to get 1 gallon, which means that a gallon is 4 times greater than 1 quart. Number 24, how many times greater is 1 mile than 1 foot? Well, our conversion chart tells us that there are 5,280 feet in 1 mile, so that means a mile is 5,280 times greater than 1 foot, because we would repeat 1 foot 5,280 times, and then we'd be a mile away. Number 25, how many times greater is 1 pound than 1 ounce? Well, our conversions tell us that there are 16 ounces in 1 pound, which means that 1 pound is 16 times greater than 1 ounce, because if you repeat 1 ounce 16 times, you're going to have a pound. Okay, that's why make sure you're memorizing this. That's why they're asking these questions, to make sure that you're memorizing them. You cannot use this on your test. I cannot explain, I cannot say enough. Make sure that you are memorizing that conversion chart, otherwise it will be cheating on your test if you are using that conversion chart. Okay, number 26 and 27. We have some elapsed time problems. Number 26, how many minutes have passed between the time shown on the first clock and the time shown on the second clock? So we're trying to figure out how many minutes have passed between this time and this time. So what we're trying to do is see, so for number 26, this is where you did have to go to your second sheet of paper, your separate sheet of paper. I've got seconds on my brain. And we're starting. This clock shows us 3 o'clock because the hour hand is on the 3, the minute hand is on the 12, which means we are 0 minutes past 3. So it is 3 o'clock. Remember, if you're still struggling with these elapsed times or these time interval problems, go ahead and look up that IXL on elapsed time. And then the second time Well, we see the hour hand is on the 5, the minute hand is on the 12. That means we are at 0 minutes past 5, so it is 5 o'clock. So we always know step 1 in these elapsed time problems is to figure out how many hours have passed. Well, from 3 to 5 is 2 hours, because from 3 to 4 is 1 hour, and then from 4 to 5 is a second hour. So that means we've had 2 hours pass. Now usually if we had some minutes, we would also figure out how many minutes there were. Like in that lesson 6? Nope, lesson 7. In lesson 7, that's where we did this. So if you are having trouble with this, go back and watch lesson 7 over the weekend while you're studying, or tomorrow, because you won't have a math lesson. It'll be a study day. So if you're struggling with these elapsed time, go back and watch that video on lesson 7. And if you'd like to reach out to me, I can help you more. I can give you some resources. I can give you some problems to solve. Just make sure to do that today or tomorrow if you're really struggling with these time problems. But because in our review, well, we have no minutes. So we know it's been 2 hours. But the question asks us how many minutes have passed, so we can't put 2 hours. That means this is a multi-step problem. Step 1 was to figure out how much time had passed. Step 2 is to convert the 2 hours into minutes. Well, we know that the hours are bigger than minutes, so that means we're going to from big to small, so we're going to multiply. We start with what we know, which is 2 hours, and then we multiply it by the number of minutes in an hour, which is 60. 2 times 60, we can use basic facts and patterns. The basic fact is 2 times 6, which is 12. There's a 0 at the end of the factors, so we put it at the end of the product, which means that 120 minutes have passed. Okay, for number 27, we're doing the same type of problem. But the question says, how many seconds have passed between the time shown on the first clock and the time shown on the second clock? So step 1 for number 19 is to figure out how much time has passed between 6:25 and 6:28. Well, we know that from 6 to 6 is 0 hours. So we have no hours to worry about. Now all we have to do is figure out the minutes. So we have to figure out how many minutes have there been between 25 and 28. So if we subtract the earlier time from the later time, 28 minus 25, well, we can just count backwards. We can count how many back it is. So 28, 27, 26, 25. So that means only 3 minutes have passed. That was step 1. We can also count up from 25, 25, 26, 27, 28. Only 3 minutes have passed. But the question is asking how many seconds. So now, step 2, we have to convert 3 minutes into seconds. Well, minutes are bigger than seconds, so we're going to multiply. We start with what we know, which is 3 minutes. We're going to multiply it by the number of seconds in a minute, which is 60. We have a problem where we can use basic facts and patterns. 3 times 6 is the basic fact. That equals 18. Put this 0 at the end of the factor, which means that 180 seconds have passed. So again, if you're struggling with these elapsed time problems, if you're struggling with the finding out how much time has passed part, go ahead and look for that IXL on elapsed time. If you're struggling with after you know how much time has passed, the hours and minutes, then the conversion part, go back and watch the video for Chapter 8, Lesson 7 from last, let's see, was it last Friday? I think it was. I'm having trouble. All the days are running together. I think it was last Friday. It was either last Friday or last Monday, or this past Monday. But go back and watch that Chapter 8, Lesson 7 video. It was Friday. I know it was. And that will help you to remember how, once you know how much time has passed, how to then convert it excuse me, into the smaller unit. And as always, if you have trouble with any of it and that doesn't help, reach out to me this afternoon or tomorrow afternoon and I will help you. Because by the time you take your test, I cannot help you anymore. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to page 763. Okay, so on the back, on page 763, or on the back of the page, oh wait, no, I forgot. Your book is set up differently than mine. So this is a brand new page. So for these problems, for this whole page, numbers 28 through 31, we're going to be using this table. I did have to make it smaller in order to fit all of those problems here, while also being able to see the chart. I'll make sure that my writing is big enough that you can see, but you can definitely follow along with the problems in your book because you do have them right in front of you. So this table represents the lengths of beads that Zoe is using to make a necklace. So that means each of the beads, one bead is 1/6 of an inch, one is 4/6 of an inch, one is 5/6 of an inch, one is 2/6 of an inch, another is 1/6 of an inch, another is 5/6 of an inch, another is 5/6 of an inch, another one is 1/6 of an inch, and a last one is 4/6 of an inch. So number 28 first tells us to represent this data in a line plot. So we're going to go ahead and draw our number line. Now let's figure out how many pieces we need to break it into. Well, I just need to look at what all of my denominators are in, or what all of my denominators are, or at least most of them. Because sometimes we've had a few problems in this lesson on line plots where some of the denominators were 4, where most of the denominators were 4, and a couple were 2, and we chose 4, because we want to look at the denominator that we see the most. In this case, we only see 6's as a denominator. So we're going to break it into 6 pieces. We're going to start at 0, end at 1, which we know is the same as 6/6, and then we're going to finish our number line. So that means we have 1/6, and I'll go ahead and label them in a second, 2/6, 3/6, 4/6, and 5/6. And now I'm going to label them because you always have to label when you're doing a line plot. 1/6, 2/6, 3/6, 4/6, and 5/6. Okay? And now I'm going to go ahead and plot each of these measurements. I'm going to start with 1/6. So I'm going to put an X above the 1/6. Then I have 4/6. So I'm going to take an X and put it above the 4/6. I hope you can see this. I know it's not very big because I can't write as big as I want to, otherwise I'm going to be covering up part of the problem and then it's just a mess. Okay, I wish you were here because then it's so much easier for you to see this here, obviously, than it is on a video, but we'll try our best. Next we have 5/6, so we're putting an X there. 2/6, another 1/6. Remember, if you see a measurement again, you don't just ignore it and say, oh, I already have an X there. You put another X. 5/6, 5/6 again, 1/6 again, and 4/6 again. So here is our line plot. We have 9 measurements, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 X's. 1 X for each number or measurement that is given to us. We have 3 X's above the 1/6, which means we have 3 beads that are 1/6 of an inch. We have 1 X above the 2/6, so that means there is 1 bead that is 2/6 of an inch. We have no X's above the 3/6 of an inch, which means there are no beads that are 3/6 of an inch. 2 above 4/6, so we have 2 beads that are 4/6 of an inch. 3 above 5/6, so there are 3 beads that are 5/6 of an inch. And none above 1 inch or 6/6 of an inch, which means we have no beads that are 1 inch long. Okay, so that's it for number 28. Now we know the rest of the questions are going to be based on this chart, which this line plot then makes it a lot easier for us to answer. Because number 28 says, what is the total length of the beads that are longer than half, that are, wait, let me make sure it's the same time. What is the difference, oh, it is different. What is the difference in length between the longest bead and the shortest bead? Well, instead of having to go up here and figure out, okay, what's the longest bead? I guess it's 5, 6. I don't see any other 5, 6, whatever. We can just look here, and we can see that our last X's are above 5, 6. So that means the longest bead is 5, 6 of an inch. And we're trying to find the difference between the longest bead and the shortest bead, which if we look over here, we see is 1/6. Now to find the difference, you would subtract. Remember, anytime you see how much more or how many more or whatever, anything like that, you're finding a difference between two numbers, so you are subtracting. Now we can't say 1/6 minus 5, 6, so we're going to say 5, 6 minus 1/6, which should be on the line. Now we can solve this using subtracting like fractions, which means we subtract the numerators as we normally would. 5 minus 1 is 4. The denominator stays the same. But now that unspoken step 3, 4, 6 is not in simplest form because both numbers are even. So by knowing basic facts, I know that 2 is the greatest common factor. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 6 divided by 2 is 3. Which means that the difference in length between the longest bead and the shortest bead is 2/3 of an inch. So you needed all of that. You needed the equation, the original answer, the division, and then the answer in simplest form, just like what we've been doing since the beginning of the year, except with fractions. So we have simplest form thrown in there. Oh, and the unit, and the correct unit. So I've seen a lot of this on homework where you would say 2/3 length. Length is not a unit. Length is something that we measure. So it's not a unit. You cannot say length. You need to find the unit. You need to find, I got confused because the question said something different and I was like, wait, that's not the, but, whoops. So you need to have a unit, which is the unit of measurement that measures length. You cannot have length. Length is not a unit. Length is a type of measurement, not a unit. Or something that we measure, not a unit. Okay, number 30. It's probably different in your book, so let me check mine. What is the total length of the beads that are 4/6 of an inch long? So what that means is if we put those 4/6 of beads that are 4/6 of an inch together, right next to each other, and then measure that, what would that length be? Well, let's look. We have two 4/6 beads, which means we are saying 4/6 plus 4/6. If we had more, we would keep adding, but we only have 2. You could have also done 4/6 times 2, because we're repeating 4/6 2 times. Either way is fine. Now we're just going to add like fractions. Well, add the numerators. 4 plus 4 is 8. Denominator stays the same. So we have 8/6. Now 8/6 is an improper fraction. So we have to go to the side. This is small, so we can do this on our paper. If you did it on your separate sheet of paper, great, that's even better. So we divide the numerator, which is 8, by the denominator, which is 6. 6 goes into 8 one time. 1 times 6 is 6. 8 minus 6 is 2, which means that our mixed number is 1 and 2/6. But we're still not done. Because 1 and 2/6 is not in simplest form. 2/6, they're both even. So that means we know that 2 is a factor of 6. So our greatest common factor automatically has to be 2. Now, before we even divide, let's go ahead and move our whole number over. Don't forget that because 1 and 2 is 6. Then we simplify the fraction. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 6 divided by 2 is 2. 1 and 2 is 6 is not equal to 1/3. It is equal to 1 and 1/3. That is why it is so important to make sure that you bring that whole number over. So, the length of all of the 4 6 beads put together is 1 and 1/3 of an inch. Or 1 and 1/3 inches. Okay, 31. The test practice is usually the same, but let's check. Which bead length has enough beads to total exactly ½ an inch if the beads of that size are laid end to end? You may have been like, what is it asking? But all it's asking is add each length of bead together. So add all the 1 6 beads together. Does that equal 1/2? Add all of the 2 6 beads together. Does that equal 1/2? Add all of the 4 6 beads together. Does that equal 1/2? And add all of the 5 6 beads together. Does that equal 1/2? Well, we can automatically say it's not 2/6 of an inch because there's only one of them, and 2 6 is not equal to 1/2. We can also go ahead and eliminate 4 6 of an inch because we already know all of those beads together is 1 and 1/3 of an inch. That is not ½ an inch. Without even doing any of the math, we can also eliminate 5 6 of an inch because there are more 5 6 beads than 4 6. So that means if we already add 2 4 6 beads and it equals greater than 1/2, then 3 5 6 beads is going to be even longer than that. So it's definitely not going to be equal to 1/2. That means the only option is 1/6 of an inch. But just in case we made a mistake because we thought we were making an educated guess here, let's check. There are 3 1/6 beads. So if I can either add that 1/6 3 times, or I can multiply 1/6 by 3. Well, step 1 for adding is add the numerators. 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 3. The denominator stays the same, so it's 6. 1/6 times 3, if we're multiplying, step 1 is to multiply the numerator by the whole number. 1 times 3 is 3. The denominator stays the same. We get 3 6 each time. And you may be saying, that's not 1/2, that means we're wrong. But 3 6 is not in simplest form. We know that 3 is a factor. Let me erase so we can. See, this is what happens when you do it all on the paper. It all gets jumbled together, and then I can't read it, you can't read it, and we're all lost. 3 divided by 3 is 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2, which means that all of the 1/6 beads put together is equal to 1/2 of an inch. Okay, so you should have already finished the reflect, and if not, do that right now. And that's it. So your test is on Monday. Tomorrow you have a chance to do some IXL. You can do some practice IXLs like that elapsed time one, or if you've already finished IXL, but you just need some more practice, you can go ahead and keep working a little on those. Make sure to call me if you have any issues or need help with anything. Even if you just need some extra resources, I can definitely email them to your parents. And just make sure that you know how to do everything that you see on the review. The review didn't really have many of the problems like what we did yesterday with those multi-step problems. So make sure you know how to do yesterday's lesson too. You will have at least one word problem where you have to do what we did yesterday, which was where you figured out you had to convert and do an operation in one problem, and you had to figure out the order. You will have at least one word problem like that, at most 2 or 3. So make sure you know how to do that. Make sure you know, make sure that you can reasonably guess objects that are a certain measurement or hold a certain measurement or whatever. Make sure that you know those conversion tables. Make sure you know all of the conversions. Those must be memorized. You have, let's see, 1, 2, 3 days, well, 4 days including today, to get those memorized. But you should have been working on this since the very beginning, because in that very first conversion lesson I told you. You will not be able to use these charts on your test, so you must memorize them. That's why I gave them to you. And that's why I created that conversion chart that has everything on it that was in Monday's little packet. So make sure you know those conversions. Make sure you know how to convert if you're going from something like gallons to cups, where you have to go to quarts and pints in between, or inches to yards, where you have to go to feet in between. Seconds to hours, you have to go to minutes in between. So make sure you know how to do that when you're working on converting units that are not right next to each other and you did not learn a conversion for on those conversion charts. Make sure you know those time problems where you have to figure out the elapsed time and then figure out how many minutes or even seconds were in an elapsed time. Make sure you know how to create line plots and how to use those line plots to solve problems like on this review. And make sure that you know how to do those multi-step problems like we did yesterday, where you had to do operation and conversion in the same problem. Okay, that's it for today. I know this is a very long video, so good job making it through. Good luck. If you need any help studying, make sure to reach out to me, because on Monday, even though you're taking it and you are allowed to ask me questions, I can only answer questions that clarify the problem. I cannot help you with how to do it. That's the whole point of a test, is that you've learned how to do it. Okay, go ahead, start studying or move on to the next lesson.